Hey everyone, and welcome back to Best English Podcast. I'm your host, Sophia, and I'm genuinely thrilled you've chosen to spend this time with me today. For all of you intermediate English learners tuning in from the USA, or anywhere really, get ready. We're about to dive deep into a topic that I know resonates with so many of you. Real-life English. Speak English like a native speaker. Now, let's clear up any misunderstandings right away. When we talk about speaking like a native speaker, it's not about erasing your unique accent or trying to sound exactly like someone from a specific American city like Boston or Los Angeles. Not at all. It's about achieving a level of fluency and naturalness where you can truly connect with others, understand the unspoken cues in a conversation, and express yourself effortlessly in any real-world situation you might encounter in the U.S. It's about building confidence and making your English sound authentic, not artificial or overly formal. Today, we're going beyond the basics. We're moving past just grammar rules and vocabulary lists to explore the hidden layers of real-life English conversation that you'll hear every day across America. We'll uncover how native speakers truly communicate, delving into everything from those tricky idioms and versatile phrasal verbs to the subtle art of intonation and those crucial conversational signals. I'll share personal stories, detailed examples drawn from common American experiences, and even guide you through some practical mini exercises, all designed to help you integrate these concepts into your own English. So, find a comfy spot, grab your favorite beverage, maybe a pumpkin spice latte if you're feeling extra American today, and let's embark on this exciting journey to speaking more like a native. Think for a moment about your usual English learning path. Textbooks and formal lessons often present English in its most pristine, perfectly structured form. But then you tune into a Netflix show, listen to a popular American podcast like this one, or overhear a chat in a coffee shop in your neighborhood, and it's a whole different sound, isn't it? That's because real, everyday American English is dynamic. It's filled with contractions, words blending together, little sounds that fill pauses, and an overall more relaxed, natural rhythm. Let me kick things off with a story. My friend Leo, originally from Colombia, shared a truly funny experience from his early days living in Vancouver, Canada, which shares a lot of conversational similarities with the U.S. He was in a bustling coffee shop, feeling a bit nervous but determined to order correctly. He'd meticulously rehearsed his line in his head. "May I please have a medium cappuccino with regular milk?" He got to the counter, took a deep breath, and delivered his request perfectly, word for word. The barista, a cheerful young woman with bright blue hair, just smiled warmly and said, "Sure thing, mate." "Anything else for ya?" Leo froze. For ya? He knew for you perfectly well, but for ya sounded completely foreign. His mind raced. Was she asking about something for yoga? Or maybe it was a completely different word he didn't know? He panicked slightly, mumbled, "No, thank you," paid, and hurried away, still utterly confused by for ya. Later, when he recounted the story to me, I explained, "Leo, for ya is simply a very casual, quick way of saying, for you. It's a common reduction. Native speakers use these types of shortcuts constantly in fast speech." He burst out laughing. "All that worry for nothing." It sounded like a completely new word. This story perfectly illustrates a crucial point. Reductions and contractions are deeply embedded in spoken American English. We all learn basic contractions like I'm for I am, you're for you are, or don't for do not. These are taught in almost every English class. But what about those less obvious ones, where words seem to melt into each other, sounding almost like a single new word? These are known as reductions. They're the sounds that happen when unstressed syllables or words are spoken very quickly, becoming softer or even disappearing. I have another quick anecdote that highlights the power of reductions in everyday American speech. My cousin, who lives in New York City, texted me excitedly about a new movie. Her message read, "You gotta see this film, it's called The Great Escapade." I texted back, a bit puzzled, "Wait, gotta? Is that a typo?" She replied with a laughing emoji, "No, silly. It's got to. Like, you have got to see this." It seems so natural and obvious to native speakers, but for someone learning the language, these phonetic transformations can be incredibly baffling. This is precisely why developing your listening skills is so incredibly vital. When you hear gotta in a conversation, your brain needs to instantly recognize that it means got to, and then swiftly interpret that as have to. It's a quick mental leap that becomes automatic with exposure. Let's look at a few more common examples of these spoken shortcuts you'll frequently hear in American English. Gonna for going to. Instead of, "I am going to go to the gym," a native speaker will almost always say, "I'm gonna go to the gym later." This is practically a word in itself now. Wanna for want to. You'll rarely hear, "Do you want to grab some lunch?" It's usually, "Do you want to grab some lunch?" This is very common in casual invitations. Gotcha for got you. This versatile reduction can mean, "I understand" or "I caught you." "Oh, gotcha. I understand your point now." Or, "Hey, I gotcha that coffee you asked for." Whatcha for what are you. Instead of the more formal, "What are you doing tonight?" you'll often hear, "Whatcha doing tonight?" or "Whatcha up to?" Coulda for could have, shoulda for should have, woulda for would have. These are very common when talking about past possibilities or regrets. "I should have called him back earlier, but I totally forgot." This sounds much more fluid than pronouncing each word separately. Kinda for kind of. "It's kinda cold outside today, isn't it? I should grab a jacket." Sorta for sort of. "I'm sorta tired after that long meeting, but I can still go out." Lemme for let me. "Let me see that report for a second before you send it." Gimme for give me. Gimme a break. This is often used as an idiom meaning "stop bothering me" or "that's unbelievable." It can also be a direct request. "Gimme that pen, please." Dono for don't know. An even more casual reduction of "I don't know." "Hey, what time is the game?" "I don't know." These reductions are not sloppy English. They are the hallmarks of natural, uninhibited American speech. They make conversation faster, more efficient, and undeniably more native-like. Learning to recognize and then use them will make a huge difference in how natural you sound. Now, it's your turn to practice. I'm going to say a few sentences, very much like you'd hear them in everyday American conversation. Listen carefully for those reductions. Then, I'll repeat them more slowly, giving you a chance to practice saying them yourself. First, "So, what are you going to do this weekend with your friends?" Next, "I really want to tell you something important about that new cafe." Then, "Could you give me a hand carrying these groceries inside?" And finally, "He should have told me earlier about the change in plans." All right, let's reveal the natural reduced forms and how they sound. So, what you gonna do this weekend with your friends? "I really want to tell you something important about that new cafe. Could you give me a hand carrying these groceries inside?" He should have told me earlier about the change in plans. Don't be shy. Try saying these out loud. The more you consciously practice these reductions, especially by mimicking native speakers you hear, the more natural they'll feel when you speak English spontaneously. It's like training your mouth muscles to produce the sounds native speakers make without thinking twice. If reductions are the secret sauce that smooths out the flow of natural English, then idioms and phrasal verbs are the rich, complex spices that add layers of flavor, nuance, and depth to real-life communication in the U.S. These two categories are often the biggest stumbling blocks for intermediate learners, primarily because their meanings are rarely obvious from the individual words themselves. They are expressions where the whole means something entirely different from the sum of its parts, often reflecting American culture and common experiences. Let's dive into another story to really illustrate this point. My friend David, who is from Spain, was at a lively backyard BBQ with some of his American friends in a suburb of Chicago. The conversation was flowing, and everyone was relaxed and laughing. At one point, the host, Sarah, sighed good-naturedly and said, "Oh, I've got to run some errands tomorrow morning, so I can't make it to the early yoga class." David looked utterly bewildered. Run errands, he thought. Like, is she literally going to jog while completing tasks? Will she be sprinting down the street with her shopping list? He actually pictured Sarah doing exactly that. Later, during the party, someone accidentally knocked over a cooler, and another guest exclaimed playfully, "Oh no, don't spill the beans about the surprise birthday party for Mark." David's confusion deepened. Beans? What beans? There are no beans here in the cooler, just ice and drinks, he thought, looking around the backyard. He felt completely lost, even though he had understood every single word individually. The issue wasn't a lack of vocabulary. It was a lack of understanding these common, everyday idiomatic expressions unique to American English. I remember another illustrative instance involving a former student of mine, Maria, from Italy. She was diligently practicing for a job interview at a tech company in Silicon Valley. One question we prepared for was, "Can you tell me how you deal with difficult situations in a team environment?" Maria had a perfectly structured and grammatically correct answer ready. However, during her actual interview, the hiring manager, trying to make the conversation more natural, asked, "So, Maria, how do you usually handle a sticky situation when you're collaborating with others?" Maria froze. Sticky situation? Her mind immediately conjured images of something literally sticky, like a spilled soda on a keyboard. She didn't realize that handle a sticky situation was a common, idiomatic American way of asking about dealing with a difficult, awkward, or tricky problem, much like deal with. This experience perfectly illustrates how quickly an idiom, or even a slightly different but common phrasing, can throw you off if you're only familiar with the more formal, literal textbook phrases. Let's break down idioms first. Idioms are phrases where the collective meaning is not predictable from the individual meanings of the words. They are cultural expressions, shortcuts in language that paint vivid pictures, often tied to American history, sports, or daily life. Understanding and, eventually, using them will make your English sound much more authentic and expressive. Here are some common American English idioms that intermediate learners will frequently encounter. Run some errands means to do a few quick, short tasks or chores, like going to the post office, picking up dry cleaning, or going to the grocery store. For example, "I can't meet for coffee this morning. I need to run some errands first, then I'm free." Spill the beans means to reveal a secret, often accidentally. For example, please don't spill the beans about my engagement until I've told my parents myself. Bite the bullet means to face and endure a difficult or unpleasant situation because it's unavoidable, often with courage. This one often implies a tough decision. For example, I really hate public speaking, but I'll have to bite the bullet and give that presentation to the whole company next week. Break a leg is a common and friendly way to wish someone good luck. It's often said before a performance, an exam, or a presentation. It originated in theater. For example, you've got your big final exam today. Break a leg. You've studied so hard. Hit the road means to leave a place, usually to start a journey or go home. Very common at the end of a gathering. For example, it's getting pretty late, and we've got a long drive. We should probably hit the road soon. Costs an arm and a leg means something is extremely expensive, often shockingly so. For example, I'd love to buy that new electric car, but it costs an arm and a leg. I just can't afford it. Piece of cake means something that is very easy to do, often surprisingly simple. For example, don't worry about fixing that flat tire. For me, it'll be a piece of cake. Under the weather means feeling unwell or slightly sick, but usually not severely ill. For example, I'm feeling a bit under the weather today, so I think I'll work from home if that's okay. Call it a day means to decide to stop working on something for the rest of the day. Commonly used in workplaces. For example, we've made good progress on the project today. Let's call it a day and pick it up fresh tomorrow morning. Knock on wood is often said to avoid bad luck after mentioning something good that has happened or might happen. You might literally tap on a wooden surface. For example, my car has been running perfectly. Knock on wood. Hit the ground running means to start a new activity or job with great energy and enthusiasm, immediately working effectively. For example, our new employee really hit the ground running. She's already contributing a lot. Cut corners means to do something in the easiest, quickest, or cheapest way, often at the expense of quality. For example, we can't cut corners on safety, even if it saves time. The most effective way to truly learn idioms isn't just to memorize them, but to encounter them in context. Pay close attention when you're watching American movies or TV shows, listening to podcasts, reading online articles, or observing real conversations. When you come across a new idiom, pause and try to understand the situation in which it was used. That context will help solidify its meaning in your mind much more effectively than just a dictionary definition. Now let's move on to phrasal verbs. These are combinations of a verb and a preposition or an adverb that together create a completely new meaning. They are unbelievably common in everyday American English conversation, and the challenge is that a single verb can combine with different prepositions to create many different meanings. This makes them a bit tricky, but also incredibly versatile and powerful for sounding natural. Let's use a story to illustrate how several phrasal verbs can come alive, specifically those related to travel and daily challenges in the U.S. My cousin, Mark, was meticulously planning a huge road trip across the southwestern U.S. He was absolutely buzzing with excitement. He had to look up hotel reviews online for weeks, comparing prices and amenities to finally dig up the best routes and attractions. Once he had everything planned, he was ready to set off. But then, the night before he was due to leave, he suddenly realized he'd completely forgotten to sort out his car's oil change. He stayed up late into the night to get it done at an all-night garage, feeling quite stressed. The next morning, he got an early start, but traffic on the interstate was horrible. He thought, "Oh no, I'm going to miss out on seeing that famous desert sunrise." Luckily, he managed to pull over quickly for gas and grab a coffee. When he finally made it to his first stop, feeling relieved, he got another shock. He realized he'd forgotten his phone charger back home. He had to figure out a way to buy a new one in a small town that didn't have many stores. He managed to track down a small electronics shop. Even though it was a hugely frustrating start, he decided to make the best of the situation and just carry on with his adventure, knowing that little bumps in the road are part of any great trip. Did you notice all those phrasal verbs woven into Mark's story? Let's quickly review them and see their common American uses. Look up means to search for information, often in a reference book or online. Dig up means to find information, especially something that was hidden or difficult to find. Often implies effort. Set off means to start a journey or adventure. Very common for road trips. Sort out means to organize something, resolve a problem, or make arrangements. Get it done means to complete a task or make something happen. Very direct and common. Miss out on means to lose an opportunity or to not experience something enjoyable or important. Pull over means to drive a vehicle to the side of the road and stop. Essential for driving in the U.S. Figure out means to understand or solve something. Track down means to find someone or something after a search. Deal with means to handle a situation, a problem, or a person. Make the best of means to cope with a difficult situation as well as possible, or to enjoy something as much as possible despite difficulties. Carry on means to continue doing something. See how the meaning of the main verb get or look or turn completely shifts when combined with a small particle like up, off, or in. This is why phrasal verbs are so profoundly important in American English. They often replace more formal single-word verbs. For instance, instead of saying recover, we often say get over. Instead of enter, we frequently say come in or go in. Learning phrasal verbs will open up a whole new level of natural communication for you. Now for some practice, I'm going to give you some sentences with blanks. Your task is to choose the correct idiom or phrasal verb from the options provided. First, my car broke down on the freeway, so I had to arch sas on the shoulder. Your options are pull over, get by, or carry on. Next, I'm not feeling great. I think I'm a bit on. Arc, maybe I caught a cold. Your options are on the ball, under the weather, or over the moon. Then, she loves to raise ways about all the drama happening in her office. Your options are spill the tea, run the show, or talk up. And finally, we've been working on this difficult proposal for 10 hours. Let's nod. Your options are call it a day, bite the bullet, or break a leg. All right, let's see how you did. My car broke down on the freeway, so I had to pull over on the shoulder. I'm not feeling great. I think I'm a bit under the weather. Maybe I caught a cold. She loves to spill the tea about all the drama happening in her office. We've been working on this difficult proposal for 10 hours. Let's call it a day. Excellent work. The more you deliberately expose yourself to these idioms and phrasal verbs, actively listening for them in American media, and trying to use them in your own conversations, the more naturally they will become a part of your own spoken English. Remember, it's about building a common language, literally. English isn't merely a collection of words. It's a symphony, a melody of sounds. Intonation and stress are the vital elements that create this music, conveying layers of meaning and emotion that words alone cannot. Think of it like singing a song. If you sing all the notes on the same pitch, it sounds flat, monotonous, and frankly, a bit boring. American English speech is exactly the same. The way your voice rises and falls, and which words or syllables you emphasize, can dramatically alter the message you're trying to send, even in casual conversation. Let's illustrate this with another story that often happens to language learners in the US. A student named Chloe from France was diligently practicing her English conversation skills with her native speaker friend, Mark, who was from California. Chloe was trying her very best to ask a question clearly and correctly. She said, very carefully, with a steady, flat tone, putting equal emphasis on each part of the word. "Are you going to the concert tonight?" Mark listened, but his expression was one of mild confusion. "Am I going to the concert tonight? Yeah, I told you yesterday. Why are you asking that way?" Chloe was frustrated. She hadn't just wanted a yes or no answer. She wanted to ask if he was really going, perhaps hinting at whether he was excited, or maybe if he was just going out of obligation to a friend. But her flat intonation, without any emotional peaks or valleys, didn't convey that nuance. Later, I explained to her, "Chloe, if you want to express surprise or emphasize, are you truly going? Zrania, we need to strongly stress R and let your voice rise significantly at the end. Or, if you want to specifically ask about his plans for going, you would stress going and let your voice fall at the end." This little story beautifully demonstrates the immense power of intonation and stress in making your meaning clear in American English. I remember another very common scenario involving intonation in American conversation: sarcasm. I was once talking to my American friend, Alex, complaining about a particularly difficult and tedious work project I had been given. I was expressing how much I dreaded it, and Alex, with a very flat, drawn-out, almost bored tone, simply said, "Oh, that sounds fascinating." I knew immediately he was being sarcastic. He actually meant the complete opposite, that it sounded incredibly boring or difficult. If he had said it with a bright, rising, excited tone, "Oh, that sounds fascinating," Zrania, it would have conveyed genuine interest. But the flat, slightly lower and extended tone on fascinating completely flipped the meaning to sarcasm. This example clearly shows how critical intonation is, especially for understanding and using sarcasm, which is very prevalent in American English conversations. Let's break down stress first. In American English, we don't apply equal emphasis to every single word in a sentence. Instead, we highlight the most important words, typically the nouns, main verbs, adjectives, and adverbs, because these are the words that carry the core meaning and new information. Smaller functional words like prepositions, articles, or conjunctions are usually unstressed and often reduced, as we discussed earlier. Consider the simple sentence, "I want to buy a new car." If you say it with a completely flat tone, putting equal emphasis on every word, it sounds robotic and unnatural. "I want to buy a new car." Naturally, you would stress the key information. "I want to buy a new car." The words want, buy, new, and car carry the most weight. Now let's really see how changing the stressed word can completely alter the meaning or focus of a sentence. Imagine someone accuses you of something. "I didn't steal your wallet." This implies that someone else stole it, but definitely not me. The focus is on who didn't do it. "I didn't steal your wallet." This emphasizes a strong denial. You absolutely did not do it. The focus is on the action not happening. "I didn't steal your wallet." This suggests you did something else with it, like perhaps you found it, but you didn't commit the act of stealing. The focus is on the specific action. I didn't steal your wallet. This implies you stole someone else's wallet, but specifically not yours. The focus is on the owner. I didn't steal your wallet. This means you stole something else of theirs, like their keys, but not their wallet. The focus is on the item. This is a subtle yet incredibly powerful way to convey specific meaning and intention in American English, and it's something native speakers do instinctively. Next, let's explore intonation, which is the melody or rhythm of speech, encompassing the rise and fall of your voice. It serves several crucial communication purposes in American English. For questions, yes/no questions typically have a rising intonation at the very end, indicating that you're asking for a simple confirmation. For example, are you coming to the game? Your voice goes up on game, almost like you're lifting the question off the ground. While questions usually have a falling intonation at the end, as you are seeking specific information, not just a yes or no. For example, where are you going for your summer vacation? Your voice falls on vacation, signaling completeness of the question. Tag questions are fascinating because their intonation can signal different things. They can have either a rising intonation when you're genuinely asking for confirmation and are unsure, or a falling intonation when you're simply confirming something you believe to be true and expect agreement. For example, it's pretty humid today, isn't it? Here, a rising intonation on isn't it is used if you're truly asking for confirmation because you're feeling cold and want to know if others agree. But it's pretty humid today, isn't it? With a falling intonation on isn't it is used if you're stating something you already believe is true, expecting agreement, almost like, I know it is, right? For statements, generally, declarative statements in American English have a falling intonation at the end. This fall in pitch signals that you are finished with your thought or idea. For example, I'm going home after work. Your voice falls at work, indicating finality. For lists, when you are enumerating items in a list, your voice typically rises slightly on each item and then falls on the very last one, indicating that the list is complete. For example, for breakfast, I usually have coffee, eggs, and toast at the market. Your voice rises on coffee, rises on eggs, then falls on toast. For expressing emotion, intonation is perhaps most vital for conveying emotions, such as excitement, boredom, anger, surprise, or sarcasm. For example, if you're excited, you'd say, "That's absolutely amazing." Your voice rises significantly and emphasizes amazing, stretching the word slightly. If you're bored or monotonous, you might say, "Okay, fine," with a flat, unenthusiastic tone, showing disinterest. For sarcasm, you'd say, "Oh, great." Your voice falls, often with a slow, flat delivery, clearly indicating sarcasm, similar to the earlier example. For disbelief, you might exclaim, "You did what?" with strong stress on did and what, and a rising intonation, showing shock. Now it's your chance to actively engage. I'm going to say some sentences, focusing on typical American intonation patterns. Try your best to imitate the stress and intonation I use. First, a simple statement. I absolutely love this podcast. Next, a yes/no question. Do you really think so? And finally, a statement with a specific emotion. What a fantastic idea. Now, let's try something a bit different. I'll say the sentence, and you try to identify where the primary stress is placed and what the intonation tells you about the speaker's meaning in an American context. She bought the blue car. What is the speaker emphasizing here? That an action happened? Next, she bought the blue car. What is the speaker highlighting now? The color of the car? And finally, she bought the blue car. What is the focus here? Is it the car itself, as opposed to something else she might have bought, like a bike? Notice how just shifting that single emphasized word fundamentally changes the focus and implied meaning of the sentence. This is a subtle, yet incredibly profound aspect of spoken American English, and it's something native speakers do instinctively. This is precisely why it's so incredibly important to not only listen to what people say, but just as crucially, how they say it. Actively listen to how native speakers stress words and observe how their voices rise and fall. It will transform your listening comprehension and your ability to sound more natural when you speak. Have you ever noticed how native speakers in the U.S. rarely allow long, awkward silences in their conversations? They instinctively use small words and phrases to bridge gaps, signal that they're still thinking, or simply hold the conversational floor while they organize their thoughts. These invaluable tools are called conversational connectors and filler words. They are the subtle ums, ahs, you knows, and likes that act like grease on the wheels of communication, making conversations flow much more smoothly and naturally. Let me share another story that often comes up in language learning experiences, particularly in a busy American setting. My student Kenji, who is from Japan, possessed impeccable grammar and an impressive vocabulary. His written English was flawless. However, when he spoke in a fast-paced American group conversation, he would often pause for several seconds between sentences, meticulously constructing the perfect next thought in his head. This prolonged silence frequently made native speakers uncomfortable, as they interpreted it as a signal that Kenji was finished speaking, or they would instinctively jump in, trying to complete his sentences for him, which is very common in U.S. conversations. Kenji would get frustrated, exclaiming, "They never let me finish my thoughts. Why are they so impatient?" I explained, "Kenji, in American English conversation, silence, especially a long one, can indeed be interpreted as a signal that you're done speaking. Native speakers use filler words and connectors precisely to signal that they're still thinking, still formulating their ideas, or simply transitioning to a new point." I recall another illustrative scenario from a business meeting in an American office. I was talking with a brilliant researcher from Germany. His ideas were absolutely fascinating, truly groundbreaking. However, he struggled with the fluid dynamics of casual conversation and professional discourse that relies on smooth transitions. When someone asked him about his latest project, he launched into a very detailed technical explanation, but he did so without many natural connectors or transitional phrases. He would say things like, "My project involves X. It's very complex. We found Y. Next step is Z." Each sentence felt like a separate, disconnected statement. The listener found it genuinely difficult to follow the logical thread of his thoughts, even though the content itself was excellent. If he had said, "My project involves X, and in addition, it's very complex. So, as a result, we found Y. Moving forward, the next step is Z." The flow would have been significantly smoother and much easier to follow for an American audience. This experience powerfully demonstrates that using connectors isn't just for academic essays. It's absolutely vital for guiding your listener through your thoughts in a spontaneous conversation, whether it's at a party or in a boardroom. Let's delve deeper into filler words. These little sounds and words serve a vital purpose. They give you precious time to think, process, and formulate your thoughts without creating awkward, prolonged silence. They don't usually add significant semantic meaning to your sentence, but they are indispensable for maintaining the natural rhythm and continuity of spoken conversation in the U.S. Here are some common filler words you'll hear constantly in American English. And These are the most basic and universal sounds of hesitation. While natural, try to use them sparingly in more formal settings. Like, this is incredibly common, especially among younger speakers in the US, but it can be overused. It has several uses: to introduce a thought or a quote, as in, I was like, what just happened? And she was like, I have no idea. For emphasis or approximation, like, it was like really difficult to finish that report on time. Or to introduce an example, I like all kinds of desserts like ice cream, cake, and pie. You know, this can signal shared understanding or simply buy you a little time to gather your thoughts. It's a very common American conversational habit. For example, it was a really tough situation, or I was, just trying to help out with the team project. Well, this can introduce a thought, indicate a slight hesitation, or act as a smooth transition, often when you're about to give an opinion or explain something. For example, well, I'm not entirely sure about that plan, to be honest. So, this is extremely versatile in American English, used to start a new thought, summarize a point, or transition between ideas. For example, so what are your plans for the upcoming holiday weekend? Anything exciting? Right. Often used to confirm understanding, show agreement, or as a simple conversational tick, sometimes with a rising intonation. For example, we need to finish this by Friday, right? Is that still the deadline? I mean, used to clarify, rephrase, or correct something you just said. For example, it was a bit chilly outside. Colder than I expected for this time of year in Texas. A word of caution. While these fillers are incredibly useful for natural speech, overusing them can sometimes make you sound uncertain or less confident. The key, as with most things in language, is balance and appropriate use, especially in professional or more formal settings in the U.S. Now, let's talk about conversational connectors. These are words and phrases that seamlessly link your ideas, ensuring your conversation flows logically and coherently. They are much more sophisticated than just using and, but, or. They act as signposts for your listener, guiding them through your thoughts and making your narrative easier to follow. Here are examples of conversational connectors and their functions, common in American dialogue. To add information or ideas, you can use furthermore, moreover, in addition, also, as well as, or plus. For example, the food at the restaurant was absolutely delicious. In addition, the service was outstanding, so we left a big tip. To show contrast or opposition, try, however, nevertheless. On the other hand, yet, but, or though. For example, it was raining heavily outside. However, we still decided to go for our planned hike in the national park. Or, that movie was pretty good though. To show cause and effect or consequence, use therefore, consequently. As a result, because of this, so, or that's why. For example, I studied diligently for weeks for that exam. As a result, I felt very confident when I took it. Or, he missed his alarm, that's why he was late for work. To summarize or conclude, try in conclusion. To sum up, overall, finally, in short, or all in all. For example, Overall, I think it was a very productive and successful meeting, and we got a lot accomplished. To introduce an example or illustration, use, for example, for instance, such as or like in an informal context. For example, I enjoy many outdoor activities, for example, hiking, cycling, and kayaking. Or, I love all kinds of sports like basketball, football, and baseball. To indicate sequence or order, you can use first, second, then next, after that, finally, or meanwhile. For example, first we'll grab some coffee, then we'll head out for some sightseeing downtown. Or, I was packing my bag, and meanwhile, my roommate was still asleep. These connectors are fundamental for constructing coherent sentences and well-structured ideas, not just in writing, but crucially in spontaneous speech. In conversation, they often come with slight pauses or subtle shifts in intonation that further aid understanding and make your speech flow more naturally, almost like musical cues. Let's put this into practice. I'm going to give you 2 short sentences. Your task is to combine them using an appropriate conversational connector, thinking about how an American might phrase it. First, I was extremely tired. I decided to stay home and just chill. Next, he's incredibly intelligent. He can sometimes be a bit arrogant, though. And finally, I absolutely adore dogs. My sister, on the other hand, much prefers cats. All right, here are some possible and natural ways to combine those sentences. I was extremely tired, so I decided to stay home and just chill. He's incredibly intelligent. However, he can sometimes be a bit arrogant. I absolutely adore dogs. On the other hand, my sister much prefers cats. Now, let's try adding some natural fillers. Think about a time you were slightly hesitant or thinking aloud. Try to naturally incorporate a filler word into your answer to this question, as if you're chatting with a friend. So, what did you do last night? Maybe you said something like, well, I watched a movie, just relaxed on the couch. Or, I went out with friends, it was like really fun, we just hung out. See how these little words and phrases make your response sound more spontaneous, less rehearsed, and more like actual American conversation? It adds a layer of realism to your speech. The biggest barrier to speaking like a native speaker is often the fear of making mistakes. Intermediate learners frequently prioritize grammatical perfection over fluency and natural communication. But here's the unvarnished truth, especially in the US. Native speakers make mistakes all the time. They stumble over words, use fillers, sometimes misuse words, or restart sentences. What makes them native isn't flawless perfection, but the ease and confidence with which they communicate, even when imperfect. They focus on getting their message across, not on being perfect. Let me share a story that deeply impacted one of my students, Lena, who is from Germany. Her grammar was impeccable, truly excellent, and her vocabulary was extensive. She could write perfect essays. But when she spoke, she was hesitant. She would pause for a long time, trying to construct the absolute perfect sentence in her head, often missing the opportunity to join the rapid flow of an American conversation. She was terrified of making even a single grammatical error. One day, she confessed to me, her voice filled with frustration. "Sophia, I feel like I always need to be perfect. If I make a mistake, I feel like I've failed." I told her, "Lena, your English is fantastic, but the ultimate goal isn't perfection, it's effective communication. Every single native speaker you hear, whether it's on TV or in line at the grocery store, makes small mistakes, stumbles, or uses informal language. The crucial difference is they don't let those minor imperfections stop them from speaking. In stark contrast, I had another student, Carlos from Mexico. His grammar wasn't always spot on, and he sometimes mixed up past and present tenses, especially when excited, but he spoke with such remarkable confidence and infectious enthusiasm. He absolutely loved telling stories and wasn't afraid to try out new vocabulary or idioms, even if he wasn't 100% sure he was using them perfectly. I remember him once telling me about his weekend plans, excitedly. He said, "I go to the park and I see a very big dog, like really, really big, and he run fast." Grammatically, of course, it should have been went, saw, and ran. But did I understand him perfectly? Absolutely. Did his minor grammatical errors make the conversation awkward? Not at all. His confidence and the natural, eager flow of his story made it incredibly engaging. He was focused on communicating his exciting experience, not on perfectly conjugating every verb. And precisely because he spoke so much and wasn't afraid to try, he quickly started self-correcting and improving. This is the profound power of letting go of the debilitating fear of making errors. Let's delve deeper into why embracing imperfection is so incredibly crucial for you as an intermediate learner aiming for native-like fluency in the U.S. Fluency over accuracy. For most everyday communication, being able to express yourself smoothly, continuously, and spontaneously is often more important than being grammatically flawless. Of course, accuracy is important for clear understanding, but it should not come at the expense of speaking at all. A fluent, slightly imperfect speaker is far more effective than a silent, perfectly accurate one. Native speakers are imperfect too. It's a common misconception that native speakers always speak perfect English. They don't. They use informal language, make slips of the tongue, mispronounce words, and sometimes even use grammatically questionable sentences, especially in rapid, casual speech. Listen to interviews with ordinary Americans or just people talking on the street. You'll hear it. This isn't a license to ignore grammar, but rather an invitation to realize that perfect grammar isn't the sole hallmark of a native speaker. Building confidence is key. The more you speak, even with mistakes, the more comfortable and confident you'll become. Confidence is an incredibly attractive quality in communication. It allows you to take risks, experiment with language, and ultimately learn faster. Mistakes are learning opportunities. Think of mistakes not as failures, but as invaluable learning opportunities. They are feedback. If you never speak, you never know what specific areas you need to improve. Each oops moment is a step forward. Focus on the message, not just the form. Your primary goal in real-life English is to convey your message effectively. If people understand you, if you can connect and exchange ideas, then you have succeeded. The form is secondary to the function. Here are some practical, actionable tips for you to genuinely embrace imperfection and accelerate your journey to more native-like fluency in American English. Don't overthink, just speak. When speaking, resist the urge to meticulously translate every thought perfectly in your head from your native language. Try to think directly in English as much as possible. This will make your responses faster and more natural. Record yourself. This might feel incredibly awkward or even embarrassing at first, but listening to yourself can be a game changer. It helps you identify your own pronunciation habits, intonation patterns, and common grammatical slips. Crucially, it also makes you more comfortable with the sound of your own voice in English. Try recording a quick monologue about your day or answering some practice questions. Focus on progress, not perfection. Shift your mindset. Celebrate small victories. Did you successfully use a new idiom you learned? Fantastic! Did you manage to hold a longer conversation with a native speaker without feeling overwhelmed? Excellent! Every small step is progress. Find a language exchange partner. Practice regularly with someone who is patient and can offer gentle, supportive corrections. Look for language exchange groups in your local community or online platforms. The reciprocal nature of these exchanges can be very motivating. Immerse yourself deeply in American English. The more you expose yourself to authentic American English through popular American TV shows, podcasts, movies, YouTube channels, and reading American news or blogs, the more naturally you'll pick up the rhythm, common phrases, and cultural nuances. Don't just listen passively. Actively pay attention to how people talk, their intonation, their pauses, their natural expressions, and how they interact. Don't be afraid to ask for clarification. Native speakers in the U.S. frequently say things like, "Could you say that again?" or "What exactly do you mean by that?" It's perfectly normal and acceptable to ask for clarification if you don't understand something. In fact, it shows you are engaged and trying to learn, which is highly appreciated. Repeat and echo what you hear. If you hear a phrase, an idiom, or an expression you like and want to incorporate into your own speech, don't hesitate to repeat it. Try to use it in your own conversations soon after you hear it. This is a very natural way that children learn their native language. For example, if someone says, "That's a no-brainer," try to use it yourself later that day if the situation fits. So, we've covered a substantial amount of ground today on our journey to speaking real-life English. Speak English like a native speaker. We've explored the casual, fluid dynamics of American English with reductions and contractions, like gonna and gotcha, and how they make speech faster and more natural. We've looked at the colorful, sometimes puzzling world of idioms and phrasal verbs, such as spill the beans, bite the bullet, and get along with, and how understanding their contextual meaning is key. We've delved into the captivating music of American English through intonation and stress, demonstrating how the rise and fall of your voice and where you place emphasis can completely change your message. We've learned about the smooth transitions provided by conversational connectors and filler words, helping you sound more spontaneous and less robotic, making your conversations flow seamlessly. And most importantly, we discussed the liberating power of embracing imperfection and focusing on confident communication, just like my student Carlos did, allowing you to learn and improve through practice, not paralysis. Remember, this isn't a sprint, it's a marathon, a continuous journey of growth and discovery. Every time you listen to an American podcast, watch a U.S. TV show, or engage in a conversation in English, you're building your skills piece by piece. Pay close attention to how native speakers use all these elements we discussed today. Don't just passively hear the words. Actively listen to the way they are said, the emotion, the flow, the unspoken cues. Your ultimate goal is not to erase your identity, your unique background, or your beautiful accent. It's about empowering you to communicate confidently, clearly, and naturally in any real-life English situation you encounter in the U.S. You already have a strong foundation. Now it's time to intentionally add those authentic layers that truly make your English sound natural and fluid. Keep practicing, keep listening, and keep speaking. The more you immerse yourself, the more you experiment, and the more you interact, the more natural and effortless your American English will become. If you enjoyed this extended episode and found it helpful, please share it with a friend who's also learning English and might benefit from these insights. And don't forget to subscribe to Best English Podcast for more in-depth tips, practical strategies, and real-life English lessons. Thanks for tuning in, and I can't wait to chat with you again next time. Until then, keep practicing your English, keep connecting, and remember, you've absolutely got this.